Morning, Raptors freak. Alexiad's here. Sunday, so we have a Sunday special report. Good morning. Just happy to see you guys here already. Monique, Raymond, Tom, good to see you. Yeah, today's something I like to check in on every once in a while. This has been a debate, a question that I bring up from time to time, and just kind of gauge the temperature of what's going on with this at different times. And back in the day, it wasn't even a contest. When I first started working at the Air Canada Center in 1999, right when Vince started playing for the Raptors, and we had that lockout season we first started, it was very, very much the Leafs were the top dog in town, all kinds of different ways. We had Matt Sundin, Ty Domi, Steve Thomas, Thomas Caberlet, Curtis Joseph, all kinds of big, huge names on the Leafs, and they were going to the playoffs. And it was the kind of thing where I showed up to work, and everything we'd get at work would be like Leaf designed. It would be in blue, but then they'd make a purple version of it just for us Raptors fans. So it was always like everything had the design intended for the Leafs, and it looked good in the blue and the Leafs, and then they'd make a purple version of it and give it to us, and that would be the Raptors version. So we were always kind of a second thought and always been thought of as a secondary occupant in our own home arena, which is interesting to me in different ways. Now things have changed a lot in the 20 plus years since I first started working for the Leafs at MLSE way back then. And I think it's changed. I think it's changed a lot. I think it's flipped a lot. And it didn't happen right away. This has happened all more recently in the last 5 years or so, obviously, partly because of the championship. But I did do some research and I went and looked at some numbers, and there's some very interesting stuff that's very telling about the trends with popularity in sports in Canada right now. So let me read what you guys are saying, and we'll get more and more into this subject. This is very interesting. I would love to hear everybody's opinions on this today because everybody kind of has their own individual viewpoint. Like Tom Duke's out on the West Coast. I'd be very interested to hear how Tom Duke views this discussion with I know the Canucks are a different kind of competitor for the Raptors in some ways, and that may not be a fair thing to compare, but Tom could tell me over time whether the Raptors have become way more popular in British Columbia over time and stuff like that. So that's the things I want to know about. I know that Monique is completely biased for her first comment here. She's like me. Raptors will win more championships than the Leafs ever will. Raptors are so ahead, and we know it. Well, technically, the Leafs are ahead because they have a lot of championships, and we're not even close. But we hopefully over time we can catch up with them and do better and better and better. But their championships are so long ago, like what 60 years ago, something like that, maybe even. So it's like we can't really win this argument right now, but let's give it some time, Monique. I like that you think that we'll make it in the end. And I think you might be right. We'll have to see. Raymond's putting his 2 cents in here. He's saying, I don't think people even know who the Leafs players' names are right now. I know I don't, but then again, I don't know the Blue Jays players' names either at this point. I am so focused on the Raptors, and every little thing that I soak up is like I don't have time to follow anything else. I don't even have that much time to follow other NBA teams. It's just the NBA and the Raptors for me right now. So I have no idea what their names are. I know there's Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner. There's Tavares. Isn't Tavares on our team too? I mean, that's just me off the top of my head. I can name 3 Leafs. So Tom Duke saying Canada might be becoming a basketball nation over a hockey nation. Yeah, I don't know overall. Now, in doing my research for today, it really is true. Hockey is a huge part of the identity of Canada and always will be. And this is not something that basketball will be able to mess with in some ways. Now, we should take the little small victories for basketball in Canada. The fact that we're invented by a Canadian, the fact that the first NBA game was played in Toronto at the Maple Leaf Gardens. There's a lot of different little things that we can celebrate about Canada's connection to basketball and the NBA. But it really is such an institutionally ingrained part of Canadian culture, ice hockey this is the thing. It also becomes a rural versus urban kind of thing, and really in some ways it's really just Toronto as in being urban, because like in the smaller rural communities, hockey's always going to win for the most part across Canada. If you get into the really small pockets of places, hockey will be more popular in a lot of ways. And I can go into different reasons for why, but we'll just keep it to, general stuff. Like with Toronto, listen, we're such a multicultural city that this is a huge part of the growth of the popularity of the Raptors is people from all around the world that are moving to Canada and coming here, and that basketball is more approachable and more accessible for everybody than hockey. That it's just the truth that for hockey to play, you have to buy a lot of equipment. And some people just get priced out of being able to play. So obviously, there's less participation and stuff like that. And this is true that basketball is growing with young people. That there's more young people that are interested in playing basketball. In fact, they did a poll of parents in Canada, and they said, which sport would you like your young person to excel in and do really well? And basketball was number one. It wasn't hockey. That's the interesting thing, that they want their kid to be a good basketball player or something like that. So it's very interesting. Monique saying it's no secret, Tom, that we might be becoming a basketball nation over a hockey nation. Now, Monique, we do need to realize that our perception is very Toronto centric. That there are a lot of people around the whole country. This is where I don't totally get, because I hear different things. Some people say, well, the whole rest of Canada hates Toronto, so why would they root for the Raptors? So, because a lot of people do hate Toronto for different reasons and stuff like that. It's silly. But anyway, that could be part of the turnoff for the Raptors. There's also just basic racism and xenophobia across Canada, that people will not get behind the Raptors because it is a predominantly African American league and stuff like that. That's just the pure truth of it. And then, so there's a difference in the city where I am right now, downtown. There's a lot of Raptors fans, and there's a lot more growing here. And, over the years here in Toronto, living here, I've seen, a very active Leaf fan base here, but I've seen even more active Raptors fan base as time goes on. And that the Raptors having such a huge turnout for their championship parade, 2 million people, really shows in full effect how many people really care about it. A lot of people say, oh, well, they didn't really care about the Raptors winning. They just want to be at the parade. That's bullshit. Quit poo-pooing our number for our championship parade, Leafs Nation. That these were real people that wanted to be there and celebrate it. And a lot of them did know what happened with the Raptors and did give a shit about it and stuff like that. So very interesting. Different things like this. Like I've got a lot of numbers in front of me right now, like as far as like revenue numbers, as far as like there's a lot of areas that the Raptors are outperforming the Leafs that you may be surprised about. All right, let me see what else you guys are saying in the comments. We'll kind of mix the comments and different subjects with the subject for today. Leafs versus Raptors. Who are the more popular team in Toronto specifically? I'm not talking across Canada and stuff like that. I'm talking about just in the city of Toronto. All right, Tom Duke is saying Armani got 1.5 million guaranteed with Rockets and 300,000 guaranteed with his recent Raptors contract. All the best to him. Who's next to get axed, or are we get another guy to try out? All right, Tom's hitting one of my news bulletins for the day. Yes, Armani Brooks was waived yesterday. This is actually good for a couple people. It's good for the Raptors. It's good for Armani. And, it is what it is. The deadline is tomorrow. That if we kept Armani till Monday, tomorrow, we would have had to pay him more guaranteed money. And I've already figured it out that we don't want him. We said this on this stream a couple days ago, that with Jeff Doughton getting the two-way contract, Armani Brooks is not necessary at this point. Well, Bobby Webster has just shown us that that's true. Now, because they cut him now before any of the training camp, and there's lots of time before training camp, Armani has time to get himself together and get himself on another training camp roster where he may have a better chance of making another NBA team. So this is actually really, really good for Armani himself, because this means that he'll have a better chance of trying to make another team in their training camp by getting latched in and going somewhere else. And I bet you he will, because he is a great shooter and he is a good NBA player. And I think that he'll make it. So all the best to Armani Brooks. I'm sorry it didn't work out with us. Now, one of the interesting things about this Armani move that has made me wonder is like, well, now we have an open spot again with our 20-man training camp. And it's made me wonder, well, are we going to go and get somebody new, or are we going to do something very interesting? Like, are we waiting for Yuta to finish his Team Japan stuff and maybe bring him in after all and have him in training camp after all? That even though he's not signed, he's an unrestricted free agent right now. There is some sort of grumblings and mumblings that maybe Yuta Watanabe may still be on this Raptor team after all, that we could sign him tomorrow and he could show up for training camp and be in that spot all of a sudden. So we need to be open to the realm of all possibilities right now. That Yuta may not be done with us and that he could come back. This is a very interesting development. Malachi with 53 in the Drew League. All right, this is really good. I love this. Malachi did great at the Seattle Pro-Am last month, 73 points. Well, now he's gone to Drew League. And listen, a lot of people have been going to Drew League this week. We saw Donovan Mitchell there. We've seen Kyrie go to Drew League. You know, LeBron and DeMar were there. We saw the Hawks go there and fail miserably. Well, we just sent our backup point guard there, and he just dropped 53 in the Drew League. This is badass. Like, honestly, the Malachi Flynn PR that's coming right now with him going so well this summer is exactly what he needed, because this is the kind of confidence in the telling the world, like, I'm for real, and that we need to take him seriously. A lot of the Malachi fans have been saying this all along, that Nick Nurse isn't giving him a proper chance to get on the court and really show who he is and why he's such a badass and why Masai likes him so much. So this should happen this year, that we'll get a chance to really see Malachi for real and maybe get this kind of crazy kind of performance like he did in Drew League yesterday. This can't hurt. And I'm so happy and proud for him. Because in some ways, it's like some people said, well, he should have played in Summer League and we could have seen him then. Well, I think in some ways, this is more impressive that he's playing in these pro-ams and he's kicking major ass and stuff like that. Drew League's no slouch. It messed up John Collins last weekend. So listen, Malachi doing this is a big deal. And kudos to him. Come on, man. Bring this energy back with you in the training camp and for the season. We need you to do this year, Malachi. This is your career, and this is also our team. And we love the Raptors. We love you. We want you to succeed. And I think you can do it finally this year. The third time's the charm is what I'm going to say right now. All right, let's see. Tom Duke's saying Raptors fans are common out west, but there are many Blazer fans also. Basketball is definitely growing here with more people playing it and watching it. Yeah, see, regionally in different places, you'll have different fans of the NBA in those pockets. Like there's a lot of Boston Celtics fans in Eastern Canada. There's a lot of Denver. My uncle, he lives in Winnipeg. He would historically root because he got the telecast for the Denver Nuggets. Like, yeah, he was a Nuggets fan, my Uncle Ward, until the Raptors rose up and got bigger and better and stuff like that. So there are different teams. I know that in Tom's area, also the Seattle Supersonics were super, super popular back in the day when they existed and stuff like that. So some of the different parts of Canada will root for other NBA teams just because they're closer regionally to where they are. Like Minnesota Timberwolves may have some fans in like north of the Great Lakes and stuff like that. All right, let's see. CC's here. Always glad to see CC. CC always has really intelligent comment or something. Let's see. Canadian societal trends becoming norms, 90s hip hop growth, tangible to basketball, therefore influenced kids from that time period who are now adults. Now, this is an interesting thing like this. Like, we talk about the Vince Carter effect. We talk about Space Jam. We talk about like different things. To me, basketball is an urban sport. It's a very urban sport. This is the kind of thing where you can go down the street here in Toronto, go to a court and just pick up the ball and just shoot around in the city. And you'll meet strangers and they'll just walk up. Whereas this hockey, I don't know how much you just walk up and pick up a hockey game with other people. It seems like you have to organize and coordinate, make sure everybody can be there with the right time with all their stuff and things like that and stuff like that. Yeah, it's very interesting. One of the interesting things that's happened this year with Toronto sports in Canada is that they've opened sports betting. Yeah, this year they've opened sports betting, and I have a very interesting article here that's saying that, since they started allowing betting here in Canada, that basketball is actually the most popular sport to bet on. That basketball gets more bets than hockey across Canada. There's way more people betting on basketball in Canada than hockey. Now, there's a couple of reasons for that. Part of it is the sport of basketball is more conducive for more kinds of bets and is better for betting because there's more scoring, there's more other things like that. But I found that very interesting that in the sport betting world, the Raptors are number one in Canada as far as like the NBA and the Raptors get bet on more than the Leafs. So that's an interesting thing that I found out. Monique saying saw the highlights G on Malachi. Yeah, fantastic stuff. I'm so happy for that young man. He needs this confidence going into this season. Just keep going with it. Keep going with it. Tom saying that CC spot on. Monique saying it's likely DJ, in my opinion. DJ, who are you talking about? DJ Wilson? Who's gonna make it? CC saying also kids growing up, observing their parents, family, friends, constant disappointment with Leafs. Also in the 90s, embracing the Jays over baseball. Championship ×2, positive reinforcement versus negative. Leafs started. Yeah, there's a lot of baggage with Leaf Nation. It's a similar franchise to the New York Knicks. Like, I really think that like the Leafs are the New York Knicks of the NHL. And I hate to say that, but it's the same kind of powers that make the Knicks bad, make the Leafs bad. And a lot of it has to do with history and tradition and ego. That people want to have control over these kind of storied franchises. Like there's a lot of people in the kitchen trying to cook the dinner for the Leafs and they have a lot of disorganization. There's too many egos involved, and then they don't get any real good building blocks. This is one of the reasons why I felt like, Masai Ujiri being the head and above the rest, for sure, leader, figurehead of the Raptors was so important. Because in some ways, the Leafs have lacked this for a long, long, long time. And there's been a power struggle, different people trying to put their will on the franchise in the roster, the construction, how they deal with things and stuff like that. And it has been a little haphazard. It's a very similar kind of thing to the Knicks. And then also you add on to it, people that are just ravenously hungry for winning and championships or anything good for the Leafs. There's so much pressure. So much pressure from the fans and the media over scrutinizing and looking at them so much. In fact, in some ways, the Raptors getting the shaft with coverage for a lot of their existence has been kind of good because they could work in the shadows to improve themselves with not the heavy glaring magnifying glass on every little thing that happens with them. It's like, well, they're an expansion team. They're supposed to struggle. Well, this kind of happens. And then when boom, they find success, it's huge. And I think CC's right. The baseball got huge in the 90s when the Blue Jays won 2 World Series. People got huge interest in it and stuff like that. And that when the Raptors won in 2019, that was another huge thing. And that's part of the reason why I think that in some ways the Raptors have overtaken the Leafs in Toronto for popularity. Now, a lot of people may think that I'm crazy for saying that, but there's a lot of things that back this up. And, this is the thing. There's a huge information war here in Canada to suppress the Raptors, just like the NBA media does in the US. That hockey media suppresses the Raptors also. That this is happening all along. This is why hockey dominates all the sports broadcasts here in Canada. This is why if you come on a YouTube channel like I'm doing right now and you start saying, oh, I think the Raptors are more popular than the Leafs in Toronto, you get a very angry backlash. You may get people coming to you, you're crazy. Hockey will always be number one, stuff like that. Well, part of that is fear. Part of that is like people are like trying to protect the integrity or the sanctity of hockey and its place in Canada and stuff like that. And they see a threat. So they get a little bit defensive or angry when you say something like that. Whereas, I might have some facts to back this up right now. Like what I just said, basketball is more popular in the sports betting right now. There are more bets being placed on the NBA and the Toronto Raptors than the NHL and the Maple Leafs. That's just the stats that since they opened this betting up, since earlier this year, the Raptors have beat the Leafs. So let's see. CC saying the draw away from away from hockey in Canada and TO. Yeah, like listen, it's true. People don't like to be losers. They don't like to feel like losing, and this is something that has hurt the Leafs for a long, 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 long time. And when I worked for MLSE, I saw the dysfunction of the Leafs franchise from the inside. And I just like, I don't see how anybody can really want to cheer for this team because, first of all, the ownership's not trying to make a winning product to an extent. They get the money from the Leafs fans no matter what. They sell out all the games, they sell merchandise, they make a lot of money, and they don't have to win to do that. They realized this a long time ago. And this has been part of their whole thing is like, yeah, we're trying to win, but they're not. They're trying to be profitable. They're just trying to make money. And Leaf fans are sick of this. If you really want your team to get better, stop supporting it. That's what I'm saying, Leaf fan. If you care about your team, don't support them. Don't give them money. And then they'll be like, we got to get people back and to get better. Because in a lot of ways, that is the business model for the Toronto Maple Leafs. We know you're going to show up and you're going to pay. We don't care how many games we win or not. You're going to show up anyway. We know this. That's just how it is. And, fans of that team are probably like, yeah, I'm sick of this. Why do I keep giving them money to see them fail over and over again and feel so shitty and stuff like that? So let's see. Monique's saying spot on. Yuta, Lex, you never know. Yuta, yeah, he's still an option. Like they were grumbling about this on the morning show this week, the Raptors show with Will Liu was talking to Takeshi. And, Takeshi's telling us that Yuta is still trying to make his way back to the NBA. That even though he's not technically on our roster, the opportunity, this is the other thing I was looking at this a little bit yesterday. The Lakers may be interested in Yuta. There's some Laker fans out there that really want Yuta Watanabe in a Laker uniform next season. And part of it is because they don't have enough good players and they see what he did for us. And they're like, you know what, let's get him. They got Stanley. They're like, oh, Stanley's great. Well, maybe we should get Yuta too. And get all our Tampa Raptors and put them on the Lakers this year. Go ahead. That's fun. CC saying hi to Tom, and they're saying hi to each other. G saying, hearing rumors, Raptors are going after Lamarcus Aldridge. That would be a huge get, like in some ways. Like, I'm not against this. I know that he's injury prone and that he's at the end of his career. I don't know. I thought he retired. He retired and he came back and started playing again for the Nets again. This would be fun in some ways. He's a good quality dude. His career stats are absolutely insane. Like Lamarcus Aldridge piled some stats up while he's playing for the Trailblazers and the Spurs. And, I've always liked him as a player also. He'd be interesting. He would not be one of our main rotation guys. He would be stuck at the end of the bench and be insurance. In fact, they may bring him in just to kind of teach Koloko big man stuff. But I'm okay with this. He's the kind of guy that I'm okay with. I like Lamarcus Aldridge as a player and as a person. His personality too is very, very good. So I would really love this. If this is who's going to end up being this 20th person, and all of a sudden, because this is part of the why we're not signing Koloko and Delano is because we want this flexibility to still be active in getting someone. So Lamarcus Aldridge, hey, but he may be past this time. It's like getting Lamarcus at this point would be very similar to getting like Serge Ibaka, stuff like that. Tom Duke saying, was going to say there's still lots of Sonics fans hoping and waiting for them to return to Seattle. Well, if the signs are pointing to that Seattle will get their team back in the next 5 to 10 years, I would bet you it'll happen sooner than later, that they really do want to do this, that they realize how much that city loved that team. And then it'd be really, really good for the league in some ways. Like it would be a breath of fresh air. The Sonics have a rich history that's been lost to a degree. It doesn't deserve to be in the middle of the country in Oklahoma City. That history is not that city's. That Oklahoma City, you have your own history now, and you're going to have to give up the Sonics history if they give that franchise back to Seattle. And that all that championship banner's got to go back to that arena, and that's not yours anymore. You guys can hold it for right now, but it's not really yours. That banner belongs in Seattle. Monique's saying Lamarcus is rusty. We almost drafted him in the past. Yeah, he's rusty. He's old. He's injury prone. There's all kinds of different stuff. It really would be like adding another older veteran guy, a presence, a personality. And like I said, the main thing may be like teaching Koloko big man stuff. One of the things I saw Coloco posted yesterday is so cool. We got Boucher posting Dennis Rodman clips all last season, like inspired by Dennis and playing more like Dennis on the court. Well, you want to know who Coloco is posting on his IG? He's posting Hakeem the Dream Olajuwon. That's right. He's posting up and unders and shake the dream shake. He's posting Olajuwon doing those moves. And if this guy's going to be his inspiration for his offense and trying to figure out his moves and stuff out, look out. Coloco, if you can do even a tenth of the things that Olajuwon used to be able to do as one of the greatest players ever to play in the NBA. I would love this so much, Coloco. So you keep watching Hakeem the Dream, former Toronto Raptor, and hopefully you can become more and more like him. I love it. I love it. I love it. Lolita is here. Let's hear what her 2 cents are. Leafs are a heartbreaking team for so many fans. Raptors' future is brighter, hardworking, young, athletic, funny, and charming. First Raptors, then baseball, last hockey. This is where Lolita ranks them. And you know what, Lolita, you're actually accurate. Like there's an interesting thing that's come out about the power rankings. Canadian sports teams power rankings. It's on the actionnetwork.com site. And they did a ranking. They said which franchises in Canada of all sports are the most popular. And so they looked at everything. They looked at hockey, football, soccer, basketball, baseball, and number one on this list. Now, to let you guys know how they figured this out, like one of the ways that they figure out what's more popular and has more interest is they go and look at the metrics online socially. Like who's getting tweeted more, which hashtag, Raptors or Leafs or Jays and stuff like that. They look at the hashtags, they look at how much mentions, they look at how many people are posting about them and things like that. This is really what this is looking at, this study. And the Raptors are number one. They're number one sports team in Canada as far as popularity. This has a whole scientific breakdown of how they looked at it, and they have an 8.45 index score. This will give you some idea of how close it is. 8.45 index score. The Jays are second with a 7.28 index score, and the Leafs are third with a 5.53. That is really interesting to me. That, if you go on social, I know that Raptors fans are very active online. Look at what I'm doing right now. Raptors Twitter is infamous for being a real force on social media. So this is part of why this is happening, is that the Raptors are just talked about way more online than any other Canadian team in sports right now. And that's very interesting. Lolita had the order right. Raptors, Leafs, and then, Raptors, Jays, and then Leafs. Those three. And then the Canadians are fourth for the country. And an interesting thing about Montreal is that when the Raptors won the championship, Montreal started becoming more of a basketball city. In fact, we've talked about this recently. Could Montreal become an NBA team at some point? That part of it is that the Canadians, the Montreal Habs, were kind of around when the Raptors were winning the championship, and that a lot of people switched over and really got into the Raptors. The basketball went up in Montreal huge after we won the championship, because this wasn't just Toronto winning it. This was the whole country of Canada winning it. And that was a huge thing that solidified the whole country and brought more of a following for the Raptors, is that we could say this is Canada's NBA team and they won. Well, Montreal got on board real fast. In fact, there was some research done that at that point in time, the Raptors may have been more popular in Montreal than the Habitants. Yeah, yeah. As crazy as that sounds, that in some ways the Raptors were more popular than the Montreal Canadiens around the championship, after the championship. So very, very interesting stats and different things coming out with these kind of things and stuff like that. So, all right, let me keep going. Monique's saying, preach on, Lolita. And CC's got more to add. Let's see. In reference to multicultural growth in Canada, historical in sports that are played with just a ball are more accessible than hockey, which is a costly equipment to ice time, etc. Therefore, less growth in hockey. Yeah, I mean, this is just the pure truth of it. This is partly demographics. This is partly just, if you look at different people, you'll see different things. Like, all right, listen, if you're somebody who immigrated to this country from another country somewhere else in the world, you're more likely to be a Raptor fan. Partly because, it's a very multicultural fan base. That the Leafs fan base is kind of gatekeeping in some ways. Like, it's very white, it's very old, traditional Canadian, and that it's not as accessible or friendly as the Raptors. And then the other thing is the Raptors are more appealing to kids in some ways. Like, they're very more appealing, so that our fan base is younger than the Leafs fan base. In a lot of ways, the Leafs fan base are older. They're people my age and older, and there's not as many young fans that are as diehard about the Leafs as they are as the Raptors. And that is something that's going to influence this over time. That there's a lot of young Raptor fans that are grow up, and then that tradition will get passed down, just like the Leaf tradition's been passed down for decades and stuff like that. See, technically, I should be a huge Leaf fan. And the way that I got off track for this is a couple of different things. My father lived in Toronto, just not too far from here in the 60s, from where I live right now here in East York. And he went to Maple Leaf games at the Maple Leaf Gardens in the 60s when they were winning Stanley Cups. He was a huge Leafs fan at that time. Well, we moved to Florida, and I didn't get to play hockey as a kid. I played basketball because we didn't play hockey in Florida. So that's part of the reason why I didn't get indoctrinated into hockey culture, is because I wasn't even in Canada when I moved to Florida at 4 years old. So I learned basketball, and I became a really big basketball fan. I didn't get mired in I rooted for the Leafs, but it wasn't until I came and worked for them and understood just how dysfunctional, just how they didn't deserve the fan base they had. The fans were way too cocky and too arrogant about who they were with how much they won. And I was just like, I can't be a part of these assholes. Like, these guys are fucking assholes. I would work Leaf games, and the people would get so drunk and act like such assholes. I would be like, I hate this culture. I hate this Leaf culture. It's shit. Like, I see stuff, like I'd be working Mr. Substand, and the dude's so fucking drunk, he's getting thrown out by security, and his son's like 8 years old and crying because they have to leave the game because daddy drank too much. It's that kind of ugly shit, or fighting, or any of that kind of stuff. You go to a Raptors game, you won't see this very often. You won't see people overly inebriated like that, where they're getting thrown out. That happens, but not too often. And then you'll see more family environment, not this like kind of thing that I'm talking about. So there's a lot of different things about accessibility with the sports, and what's more friendly, and what's more like got more personality, maybe more excitement, more interest, and stuff like that. Like, that kind of stuff. Raymond Jacobs saying Leafs don't have rookie of the year Scotty Barnes. Okay, this is a huge point, and this is funny that Raymond said this, but this is true. Like, all right, the Leafs have superstars like Austin Matthews. They have people that are interesting and appealing to people, but not like on the level of Scotty Barnes. Scotty Barnes is the kind of guy that's like Vince Carter, that's like Magic Johnson, that's captivating. It's somebody that, like, holy crap, you want to watch them. You're interested in them. Why would I watch him on Twitch for 4 hours just playing video games? Because he's interesting to find out about. He's charismatic. He's got something to him that attracts people to want to watch and stuff like that. And that's going to be a huge factor in the next couple of years. Is Scotty's growth and continued play on the Raptors will draw and attract more and more people to watch. And that in some ways is going to hurt the Leafs in some ways. Scotty Barnes, him being such a huge superstar coming up and stuff like that. CC saying, in reference to Malcolm Caldwell, author to Book Outliers, addresses Caucasian access, exclusivity versus basketball, multicultural, inclusive sport. She is referencing real studies done by real like scholars and stuff like that. This is amazing. This is very much like my grad school talking about outliers and exclusivity and stuff like that. Yeah. This is so true. Like, in some ways, hockey has made itself so not pretentious, or just, it's kind of like gatekeeping once again. Like, it's a sport for people of a certain income. And that, in some ways it's kind of like a country club with golf and tennis. You got to be a certain person to come and be able to play at that country club and stuff like that. So it's not very inviting or very everybody. Whereas like sports like soccer and basketball are so easy to pick up and to get into. And I was going to say the most popular sport in Canada is actually soccer. That soccer is the most popular sport in Canada. It's not basketball and it's not hockey. Soccer is and stuff like that. So, all right, let's keep going. G saying, I said Lakers will take all Raptors, cut players, laugh my ass off. Yeah, well, they're looking at it. At least the fans are calling out for Utah in a Laker jersey this year. Lolita saying, I support all our teams. It just hurts when we lose. Yeah, and people don't want to feel that hurt, so they decide they kind of want to just like stay a little distant from the Leafs, and sometimes they don't. I told myself I'm not going to start watching them in the playoffs until they get past the first round. Sure, they'll make the playoffs, that's great, but they got to get past the first round. Then I'll start watching them and rooting for them because that's where the bar has been cut every time. It's like I want to see them progress. I want to see them get to somewhere else. And don't get it twisted. I really, really love the Leafs to win a Stanley Cup. I want any Canadian team to win a Stanley Cup. The cup belongs in Canada. I do truly believe that and stuff like that. And I'm not a total hockey hater. I love the Winnipeg Jets. Let's just put it that way. Because listen, they're the kind of team that you can really root for because they lost their team. They went without it for a while. And I saw the pain on my uncle's faces in Manitoba when they lost the Winnipeg Jets. And they didn't, and them getting it back is such an inspirational story. They really, really covet and appreciate having their team because they didn't have it. And that's the opposite in some ways of the Leafs. The Leafs have everything, golden platter, everything. Oh, you're cushy. And then like the Jets, they had to come back and now they're back and they don't get any respect or anything like that. That's why I root for them because it's not easy to be a Jets fan and they've had a hard time and they've earned a lot of the happiness and things that they've had come back to them and stuff like that. So Monique's saying, I can't answer any Leaf questions. I don't know them. Yeah, I don't either. I really don't, Monique. I used to play fantasy NHL and I knew a lot more about the NHL at that time. I knew all the players. I knew who was good and stuff like that. But this is like 15 years ago I was playing NHL fantasy and stuff like that. So I really don't know. All right, let's see. Lil Ricky's here. Do you know anything about Bitcoin? I'm thinking about emptying my 401k into this new business venture. Any tips you can give me would be greatly appreciated. What is the new business venture, Lil Ricky? Is it just getting into cryptocurrency? I don't know enough about it. I will tell you that I had a good friend named Donish who was into it, but he died a couple of years ago. It was too bad, but he was really into it. He knew a lot about it. He was trying to get me involved, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know enough about that subject. I'm really not a finance guy. I'm not really a money guy. I'm going to talk a little bit about money today, specifically money that is generated by the Leafs and the Raptors. In fact, let's go to the next part of the section that I want to talk about. Which team is worth more? Which team is worth more between the Raptors and the Leafs? This is a good indicator of like which team's doing better. Well, right now the Leafs are not worth as much as the Raptors. The Raptors are worth $2.55 billion. They are the best valued franchise in sports in Canada. They are the most, they are worth the most out of any franchise in Canada right now. The Raptors are number one, $2.55 billion is what they're worth. The Leafs are worth $2 billion straight. So, and they're second. And the Blue Jays are third. This is in the city of Toronto, actually. This isn't the whole Canada. This is in the city of Toronto. The Raptors are number one, Leafs second, Blue Jays third, Toronto FC, and then everyone else is what this list is saying. So the Raptors are actually valued higher and worth more than the Leafs. That's very interesting to me because that hasn't always been the true. This has been a recent development since the championship and the great positive, successful years the Raptors have had over the last decade or so. So there you go. The other one that was real interesting to me to find out too is merchandise. Because there's a lot of merchandise that's sold by the Leafs. The Leafs sell a lot of merchandise, but so do the Raptors. And that's very close with that kind of stuff. They both sell a lot of stuff and things like that. So, all right, let's see. What else did I want to say? Let me keep going with the comments. I'm sorry, I can't help you with the currency stuff. I really don't know anything about it. CC saying, agree with Lolita. I've observed my hardcore lifetime Leaf fan dad year after year, sad and frustrated. He started watching Raptors more, back to the positive, negative reinforcement fan experience. Yeah, the Leafs took fans for granted for way, way, way too long, and there was been way too much time where they just didn't give a shit about winning. Like I said, it was only about the bottom line and making money. They were going to make money no matter what. So why did they care whether they won or not? That's the thing. Now, when Tim Lewicki showed up to the MLSE and started helping these teams, he created Toronto FC. He got the plans for OVO Center to be made. He hired Masai Ujiri. And one of the things that Tim Lewicki said around that time, he says, I'm going to predict in 10 years that basketball is going to be more popular than hockey in Toronto. And he's kind of right that this has actually happened. This is way before any kind of championship or anything. Tim Lewicki was saying this in like 2013. So that's a big deal and stuff. So that's the thing. People like to feel good about winning. And when you have something that just doesn't make you feel good over and over again, you get kind of like, why? Why am I doing this? So, and the commitment of Masai Ujiri to winning, and this is not a hollow commitment. In fact, we watched Scotty Barnes talk about his shoot for the slam cover this week. How many times he said "win" in the words that he was saying. That this is not something that we take lightly. In fact, I watched that interview that Nick Nurse did in Hungary that Monique was talking about yesterday, and it is fantastic. Honestly, it may be one of the best Nick Nurse interviews ever done by an interviewer, by a guy who doesn't even speak English for his first language. He did such a good job asking important questions. And this is the interview where Nick Nurse says Scotty Barnes is 6'10". He also is talking about like things like he talks about Chris Boucher and telling him you're messing up. And like he's talking about how Chris said it and like that he needed to hear it from Nick. And he's like, yeah, sometimes I have to do these with these players and just be real honestly, brutally honest with them about what you're doing wrong and why you're messing up and how you can improve and stuff like that. The dude was just so good at asking questions. I forget some of the really, really good answers he got out of Nick Nurse, but really, really interesting stuff. This may be one of the best Nick Nurse interviews ever. I'm telling you right now, there's some stuff in it that's so interesting. Like, wow, why did he asked him that question? I've always wanted somebody to ask him that question. And finally somebody asked him and he really answers like really interesting questions and stuff like that. So check out that Nick Nurse interview. Monique is right. It's really worth watching. All right, let's keep going. G saying, I watched the Leafs last season in the playoffs. Bad luck they played Tampa Bay, who made it to the finals, and they did put up a good fight. Think next year they will get past the first round. Laugh out loud. Yeah, that's part of the problem, too. It's a similar thing to what the Jays had to deal with being in the American League East for many, many years. You're in there with the Yankees and the Red Sox, which are like big deals, and they're putting a lot of money into those teams to compete. And the Jays didn't have any real chance of doing much in the playoffs because there were only a certain amount of spots that you could get out of the American League East into the playoffs. Well, they added an extra wild card, and that helped things open up. Well, the Leafs, in some ways, are in a similar situation in their division in the NHL. That they got Tampa Bay and Boston and these other really been super teams in the last couple years, like as far as how good they are year in year out, and that's been to their own detriment. In fact, I don't like the way the NHL seeds their playoffs. It doesn't really make total sense because you could have two of the best teams in the first round playing each other, like the Leafs versus the Lightning this year. And that shouldn't be that way. Like, because, like, listen, you should have the two best teams in the East opposite each other in the bracket so that they can hopefully face each other in the Eastern finals. So that, I don't agree with that. And I think that is unfortunate for the Leafs in some ways, but that could also be contributing to part of the reason why they don't get past the first round is because of the seeding and the way the NHL does their playoffs and stuff like that. Monty Python's here. They do everything better in Europe. We're too pretentious here to ask difficult questions. I like that. Yes, Monty. Talking about, well, it's just like the dude got one shot. He wanted to make sure he got it in good. And he's like just asking so many questions. Part of it is he's a coach himself and that he wanted to really make something valuable for him teaching other coaches. That this whole conference Nick was at this week was a coach's conference to learn how to be better basketball coach. So that guy was a coach, and so he knew really good questions to ask. Man, he had some good ones. I can't think of any right now for some reason. It's so stupid. But there was some stuff that he said that was real good inside knowledge and stuff like that about things and stuff like that. And you're right. The people here, like Lewinberg, Grange, Doug Smith, Eric Kareen, Lindsey Dunn, whoever, all those people that are in the room, Orrin Weisfeld, all them asking the questions, Aaron Rose, they kind of come at them with like little soft jabs, nothing really that like softballs. They throw softballs at them. And sometimes they don't even really ask the things that really what we want to know or understand. I think you're right. Yeah. They could learn something from that guy. All right, let me see. There's more on my list I want to talk about. All right, Gary Trent Jr. Listen, oh man, this dude, listen. I wonder about Gary and who he is as a person sometimes, but and then I'm like, holy crap, this dude is amazing. He's a badass. Yesterday morning, at like 6 in the morning on a Saturday morning, this man is on the beach in Miami running around cones, doing some crazy ass workout in the sand with no shoes on, hopping over things and stuff like that. He's saying, I'm putting in work. I'm like, holy crap, this man's up at 6 out on the beach, running around in the sand, getting his workout in, stuff like that. That is a badass. I am so excited to see how Gary does this year. And then it's really cool, like with the sun coming up and him doing it. You can watch the footage. It's very inspirational, and it makes you understand that Gary is another one that's very serious about his pro career and being in shape. There's also some cool footage of him with his dad doing kind of like weird anime kind of posing, like they're fighting or something, or they're doing some sort of Tai Chi or something. I don't know. Monty's saying our media here just asks questions to placate the players and coaches. It's ridiculous. Yes, sometimes they'll go after him. Like I'll see, like I hate it when these guys in our media scrum kind of ask questions that kind of divide the Raptors. Like, man, I can tell when they're doing that, and I really get pissed off. Like there's certain interviewers that ask questions that I'm just like, why did you ask that? You're an asshole. Stop, please. Don't do that. Please don't do that. All right, let me see. We talked about all that stuff there. All right, let me just look at this one thing. I want to read this, and this is getting back to what Cece was talking about earlier. This is from Reddit, and this is from a stream that is about which team is more popular in Canada, in Toronto, the Leafs or the Raptors. And this is saying, I just read this verbatim. This is by Listen Brove. Much of this is anecdotal, but source me being raised in Canada after landing as an immigrant kid now in my 30s. Most immigrants, especially immigrant kids across Canada, gravitate towards basketball. I think it's because it's a sport made up of minorities, so we appreciate the struggle of the stories, and most importantly, it's cheaper to pick up than American football and hockey, so we identify with it more. Also, ballers in general are cool as fuck and associate with hip hop, which is another thing that immigrant kids tend to naturally gravitate towards. I assume it's something about struggles and rags to riches. Unsurprisingly, a lot of the Raptors fans I've met and interacted with and regularly see are Asian, South Asian, and Middle Eastern immigrants, especially millennials and Gen Z. Not to say white Canadians don't love the Raptors. After all, they are the ones buying the corporate seats and attending games generally. But if you quiz 10 immigrant teenagers in the general greater Toronto area or any other city in Canada with large immigrant populations, I bet 9 out of 10 would say they are Raptor fans and not Leaf fans, which you won't be able to say for any other non-city areas in the country. Also, I'd say the most immigrant kids tend to be more forum inclined and active on things like Reddit. This is generalization, but again, from experience. So that probably explains the uptick in Raptors fans online from across the country. As an aside, though, growing up with other minority friends, literally everyone watched basketball. However, once I entered the corporate world in Toronto, there was an entire pool of fans for the Leafs and hockey that are generally not on forums, older fans specifically, but make it clear that the Raptors are number 2 in popularity. For example, in my office of 200 plus in downtown Toronto, mind you, I was one of 3 people who followed basketball. The rest were hockey and baseball fans. On a completely related note, the 3 basketball fans were also all immigrants like me. So see, that post on Reddit really kind of illustrates the whole scenario of it. That the hockey fans are older and white, and that basketball fans are younger and more multicultural and stuff like that. And that, if you're a demographer and you're looking at that, well, then that would make sense that hockey's dying a little bit more as older people die and younger people get older. Then that means that the popularity of basketball will grow. This scares the hell out of some people that are really like staunch Canadians and like our country's changing and all this kind of stuff. Oh my gosh, no, we can't have this and stuff like that. The one thing I always say to people that have trouble with things changing and stuff like that, change is going to happen. You better just get with the program. And that half the people out there that are trying to fight against change they can't do anything about it. That the world is the world. It's going to evolve the way it's supposed to evolve. And that if you want to hold a status quo that's outdated or something that just doesn't really fit in the whole thing, it will naturally just change, whether you like it or not. And that may be part of what's happening here. That, even though the sports media in Canada has held the Raptors as second class citizen, held it behind hockey, that doesn't mean that it's that way for like the real population, how people really feel about it and stuff like that. In fact, that may galvanize and make people more interested in basketball because they see it getting slighted. And they're like, well, I'm for the underdog. That's part of the reason why I root for Toronto, for the Raptors, is because we're the underdog in the NBA in some ways. Even though we're a very good team and a powerful team, we're also an underdog, always will be, just because we're the Canadian team. And some people really identify with being the underdog, and they don't identify with the team that has everything and spoils it and just doesn't do anything with it. And that is a purely an identity kind of thing between the Leafs and the Raptors. The Raptors get slighted, they come through and they overcome. Meanwhile, the Leafs get handed everything and they don't get anywhere. That's the thing that probably changes how people really root for the two teams and stuff like that. So Monty's saying they all just want to be liked. Yeah, the media just wants to be liked by the coaches and the players. Some of them do not, because they're very rude. CC saying, I watched the Nick Nurse interview as well. Sometimes people are less guarded when they are not with local media. Also, local media tiptoe a bit scared to risk access and media relationship. Yeah, I think you're right. This guy in Hungary had his time. He had to shoot a shot right then and get it all in there. And then also, the other thing is that this is in another language. Like the way it was on YouTube, it was actually in Hungarian. Maybe that you have to be crazy like us and seek this kind of stuff out, like Monique, CC, and I, and watch it. The general Raptor fan may not find this clip, or most people won't find it. It's like, you have to really be into it to find it. So maybe Nick's like, I'm in another country. I'm on vacation with my family. It's my birthday week. Oh, sure. I'll just be as candid as possible and just answer everything that you asked me, because he did. One of the things he said, okay, it just reminded me, CC, your comment. This is awesome. What Nick Nurse said in this interview that I love, and it's so genius. It's so genius. Like, this is why our team is so badass, is because of this kind of ingenuity. One of the things Nick Nurse is doing this offseason with his assistant coaches is he's renaming everything. He said that he's going to rename all the plays and everything that they do. And I hope this doesn't cause too much confusion for the team and relearning. But the reason why he's doing it is because he feels like other teams in the league and other coaches and other players have figured out some of their calls on the court. That, like, if they say a play or something like that, oh, they're figuring it out. So he wants to rename everything this year and have different names for stuff, just to keep that kind of secrecy and mess up the other teams from trying to figure out what we're doing. That is a genius. That is genius kind of stuff. And then he's starting it now. He said the assistant coach and I are starting to rename everything different names than last year, just to mess with the other teams. I love that so much. Lolita's saying, Cece, I know how he feels. I was brokenhearted for years and still want them to win. I mean, I really do want the Leafs to win. Don't get it twisted. I love to see this city go crazy and get what they wanted for so long and stuff like that. I have good friends like Stevie Roots that absolutely love the Leafs, will always love the Leafs. They're such an important part. And I would love to see these people get happy because of it. But it's also like a balance. It's kind of like, I want to see them happy, but also I want them to get what they deserve also. Because in some ways, I don't know, Leaf fans maybe don't deserve this, but maybe the people that run the Leafs do deserve this. That's what I'll say. CC saying, in reference to that Reddit comment, well written. Yeah, when I was doing my research, I read that and I was like, this just really gives a good picture of it all from somebody that can give it from a place that I can't. Like, as far as me not being, a minority and an immigrant in that way. That I was like, yeah, I have to read this. That this really kind of illustrates exactly the whole landscape of this fandom thing that we're talking about today. CC saying at Lolita, yes, I always hope that my dad can see a Leafs Stanley Cup one day. Honestly, watching my dad's decades of loyalty to the Leafs is so sad. There's a lot of sports franchises that have this kind of thing. Just imagine you're a Cleveland Browns fan or something like that, or right now Kings fan. It's like Sacramento Kings. It's not easy being a sports fan of a team that is perennial loser and stuff like that. And exactly like for your dad, CC, I want to see my dad and all kinds of different people get that joy of seeing the Leafs win another Stanley Cup someday. CC saying, I always said if the Leafs won, Toronto would shut down the city for the parade. Yeah. I mean, they probably should have done that for the Raptors. They kind of did. Like at schools on that day when we had the parade, part of the reason why there's so many people there is a lot of the teachers just told their kids not to come to school that day. They just said, we know you're just going to skip. So you go ahead and just go to the parade. So a lot of the kids that were supposed to be in school came downtown and went to the parade for that day because it was just such a big deal, and they should have done that. Because, like, listen, these are kind of things I hate. I don't want to say it's a once in a lifetime thing. This thing with the Raptors, I know we're going to get some more, but it is that kind of thing that's very special, and you should allow people to go and enjoy it and stuff like that. So, all right, let's see. G saying outside of North America, people in general are more direct and blunt, and when translated to English, comes off even more blunt at times. Goran, for example, but he ended up embracing the villain label. I think it's so funny that Goran didn't go to Dallas after all. Like they gave him an offer, but he didn't want it. He is such a choosy little fuck. Like honestly, Goran, get over yourself, man. Like who the fuck are you, man? Seriously, in this league that you can be like, I have higher aspirations, and then you go to fucking Brooklyn, and then you're telling everybody you want to go play with Luca, and then you have the opportunity, you don't even take it. You're a fucking idiot. Like honestly, I would say right now, Goran Dragic does not deserve to be on a team with the great Raptor like DeMar DeRozan, and that's why I'm like, why the fuck is he on the Bulls? Like, I hate that. I hate that DeMar has to be his teammate this year, and I hope they don't use him there either. Like that's part of the reason why he said he went to Chicago is he's saying the Bulls will play me more and use me in their rotation. He doesn't think that Dallas will. Goran Dragic, you asshole, you fucking idiot. All right, let me keep going here. But it's true. They are more blunt in other countries and more direct and more to the point. There's less bullshit. They're cutting through the bullshit and the fluff, those kind of things. I think that's a big difference between media and stuff like that. Duke Rocks is here. Good to see Duke. When the Leafs lost to Montreal 2 seasons ago, that was the biggest heartbreak for me. I would say I was a bit sour on the Leafs, but they will always be my team, not competition. Leafs versus Raptors. Yeah, it's not really a competition between the two. It's just a perception thing. Like, I really wonder about this because is Tim Lewicki right that in some ways basketball is more popular in Toronto? I'm not saying overall all of Canada, but in Toronto specifically, downtown. And that's partly because the makeup Toronto is very multicultural, a lot of immigrants, a lot of young people. And those people both skew towards liking the Raptors more and stuff like that. So, and some people will say, like, some of the people who have been very like, no way NBA is even close to being as popular as hockey are a lot of people that live out in the boonies, that live out in rural areas that are, they're insulated maybe away from the city and the multiculturalism in the city. So that when they hear stuff like this, they may not have a realistic picture of the whole thing, because they're just thinking from their mindset out in the country and stuff like that. Well, hockey's big out here. I don't see anybody playing basketball out here and stuff like that. So, and the ratings thing is, I'm not totally clear on who gets better ratings. It's hard to figure out who gets more watchers, partly because the Raptors get shafted and get put on these premium cable channels like TSN3. And not as many people have those channels. They don't pay for that. So how can they count that in? And then another factor in it is that the Raptors have a lot of young people that watch it through their devices, or they get the games and the highlights in other ways than like the normal watching it on the TV kind of way. And you can't even add all that up in some ways to really figure out the numbers. So looking at TV ratings for hockey and basketball is kind of hard to kind of match that up, because the market for the hockey is traditional and is CBC and watching TV. I mean, CBC's on antenna. You can get CBC and you don't even have cable. You can watch a Leaf game. And that's not the case for the Raptors. So part of it is accessibility to watching the games that influences the ratings the TV ratings. And that's why I didn't want to bring them up, because some people will say, well, the Leafs just absolutely kill the Raptors in ratings. Well, do they though? Like on the whole, the Raptors do really well across the country with national broadcasts. The Leafs don't necessarily, I mean, they do well also, but they don't necessarily do as well in other markets around Canada as the Raptors do. So it's really hard to quantify and exactly say who gets better TV ratings between the Leafs and the Raptors, because the Raptors are at a disadvantage in a lot of ways. The Leafs are rolled the red carpet and given every opportunity to get ratings like crazy, whereas the Raptors aren't necessarily. And that holds them back. So I would wonder if it was adjusted and actually an even playing field, what the numbers would look like then. Stuff like that. So G saying DeMar, Raptors fans will boo Goran and cheer DeMar. Those games will be hilarious. Yeah, they will be. They'll be fun. They'll be fun. When the Bulls come to Toronto, we'll let Goran know, just like I did when Brooklyn came back after that back to back home at home with Brooklyn. Oh, I went to that game. I was merciless with Goran. In fact, I almost got thrown out of that game because I had my mask down so much booing him and stuff like that. But yeah, DeMar will get all the cheers and Goran will get all the jeers. That's for sure. All right, I'm just coming up on an hour, guys. I don't know if we fully covered this. This is something that just has to keep getting revisited from time to time and stuff like that. You know, it may depend on what you're a fan of, your perception. You may be a big Leaf fan. You're going to say, well, the Raptors will never be bigger than the Leafs in Toronto. Well, we don't know exactly. But it's a lot closer than it's ever been in the history of Toronto sports. That if we look at when I came into MLSE and started making Mr. Sub at the Air Canada Center in 1999, it was not even close. The Leafs were by far the more popular team in Canada, in Toronto. But things have changed a bit over years and years of success with the Raptors. They're hip, they're cool. Drake came along. We got better uniforms. We got more exciting players. We won a championship. We're on winning curve. People like to get behind winning. This is easy for people to get on the bandwagon and the popularity to surge when you are a successful team. And that's a big difference right there. And that may be part of the reason why MLSE is kicking themselves in gear to try and get the Leafs to be more competitive and better, because they see that they're losing in this battle of being successful and getting attention because of success. That the Raptors are getting way more attention because of their success in some ways. So let's see. Duke saying, did you look up that info on how the NBA got started by NHL owners? I have a conspiracy theory about that. The Huskies didn't fold. Basketball would be a direct competition to Canada's national pastime. That's very interesting. I never did look that up, but I do remember you talking about it the other day, Duke. And that is an interesting thought exercise. To think if the Huskies hadn't folded after 1 year, what would have happened if they had been a franchise like the Celtics and the Knicks that had been in the NBA the whole time? That could be very weird. Like it would be like a bizarro world. It could be a very bizarro world. Like, who knows? Like, if the Raptors had a whole bunch of championships from being in the league already, what if we had like 10 championships in the NBA already because we were in the league the whole time? Wow. Wouldn't that be interesting? If we were like up there with the Celtics and the Lakers as far as that kind of thing. Who knows? It could have happened. Who knows? Listen, okay, so Duke's saying that part of the reason why the Huskies may have folded in the first year was that hockey people saw the threat of basketball and its popularity, and they wanted to kill it and try and stop it at that point. I don't dispute that this is probably very true. We got to understand that there's people that want to hold status quo in all kinds of different ways, whether it's the way the society's set up with, money and the rich get richer and stuff like that, or whether it's people that are involved in hockey and they want to keep the status quo of its popularity and its place in Canadian sports. So there are going to be people fighting in nefarious, weird ways on the down low. Like partly the thing with Ted Rogers at the beginning of the year, him telling Masai Ujiri that he didn't deserve his contract and he didn't want to pay him that money, and that they went ahead and paid him even though he didn't want to do it. That is a little bit of gatekeeping in some ways. That Masai Ujiri solely as one person is a huge part of the reason why the Raptors are so successful right now. So maybe Ted Rogers III didn't want him around anymore because he correlates him with the Raptors being successful. He's like, well, if he leaves, then maybe the Raptors will be shittier and not so much competition with my Blue Jays and the Maple Leafs also in hockey. So that's the kind of stuff we need to be aware of as Raptor fans. That it's not just forces in the States that are anti-Raptors, that like the NBA in the States and stuff like that. We have it on this side of the border too, coming from the other professional sport. So I should say, because it is the Blue Jays too in some ways, but not as bad. Blue Jays isn't as bad because their season doesn't really line up with our season in the right way to be that competitive. It really is that kind of thing. All right, guys, thanks for being here with me today for a Sunday special report. Just taking another glance at which sport is more popular in Toronto right now. Which team is more popular, the Leafs or the Raptors? And there is no there isn't any like specific answer to that. We don't know. It depends on your metric. If you're evaluating the team as a franchise and how much it's worth, the Raptors are worth more than the Leafs at this point. If you're evaluating it by ticket sales, the Leafs sell more tickets. They sell out every single game no matter what. But the Raptors do pretty good with strong ticket sales also. Merchandise, it's not totally clear also. It could be either way. I mean, I think the Raptors sell more merchandise worldwide, maybe just because they have a more global fan base in some ways than the Leafs. The Leafs don't have as much of a global fan base. And people around the world may be Bruins fans or Red Wings fans or the Raptors and the Lakers have really, really good global fan bases, considering everything. All right, let me see. Let's see what else. Duke saying, when did basketball popularity take a turn into pop culture? All right, we can say this historically. There's been different points in time where this happened. In the 60s, the NBA became big because of the Celtics. The Celtics and Bill Russell and Bob Cousy were killing it. They were winning like every championship in the 60s and beating poor Jerry West down and stuff like that. But that kind of came mainstream in the U.S. To a degree because of the Celtics winning so much. But it really was in the 80s that Dr. J was kind of the preliminary one. But when Michael came in and that whole Nike, Michael Jordan, Chicago Bulls things happened, boom. Magic and Larry also, big part of it. But that's what really became when NBA became pop culture and pop mainstream and stuff like that, was really Michael, Magic, and Larry. And then there's been the NBA's model is to continue having superstars carry that torch forward, whether it's Shaq, Allen Iverson, now LeBron, Kobe, different big players carry that torch. And that's why like somebody like Scotty Barnes is that kind of player. And that we're going to have that kind of player that's going to carry that kind of torch going into the next decade or so. So that's really interesting. But yeah, I would say in the mid 80s is when basketball really turned into pop culture and more important, and really had a lot to do with Jordan and just how much Jordan made things so crazy and popular. All right, y'all. Thanks again. I appreciate everybody. We're part of that online presence of the Raptors Nation that is so big and overwhelming. In fact, we are maybe one of the most active social media fan bases out of all sports and all franchises around the world, stuff like that. So Joe Stark saying, this Raptor fan had one freaky Saturday. Sorry I'm late, guys. I'm wondering if you went to Caravana and had a good time this weekend. Such good stuff. I'm glad to see everybody having a good time down there, and hopefully no craziness or anything silly going on down there. Yeah, Duke Rock's saying, that's what I heard. 80s, it took 30 years for the NBA to get going. Well, there were different problems with the NBA at different stages. Like the NBA didn't generate a whole lot of money for the first 20 years or so. And then when, the Celtics became a big deal in the 60s, that started to get some money going. And then like the 70s were really bad for the NBA. You had the ABA competing with it. It kind of got watered down. There was a lot of drug issues with basketball players at that time. In fact, in the 70s, the Suns almost lost their team because their whole team was hooked on cocaine. That's a true statement. The Suns were a notorious cocaine team in the late 70s. And that the whole, there was another thing that happened with the Lakers had a player called Kermit Washington who punched Rudy Tomjanovich in the face, who played for the Houston Rockets at the time. The coach, Rudy Tomjanovich, used to play. And there was a really ugly scene in the middle of the game where Kermit Washington nailed him right in the face. And he busted his face bad, like blood just pouring out all over it. So the NBA had a really bad image problem at that time of being thugs and being on cocaine. And so it was in trouble. It was actually folding. in some ways, like at around 80. It was like Larry and Magic saved the league. Like if you watch the Winning Time thing on HBO with John C. Riley, that's the whole thing that they're talking about with like you need to win or you're going to lose your team. The whole league was in trouble at that time because there was a lot of bad press and they had a very bad image problem at that time. So Magic and Larry fixed all that. Magic himself individually, and then that rivalry, boom, all of a sudden the NBA started doing way better. And David Stern was a genius. Like he was a marketing genius in all kinds of different ways. He really, really built it up himself. Joe Stark saying, so long, Monsieur Brooks. So happy to see that. I don't think the Raptors are going to sign anyone else. One possibility is an incoming trade, which I seriously doubt. We were talking about this earlier, Joseph. I think that they may still sign Yuta and have him come back and take that last spot in training camp. That there's a little bit of chatter that he's not done with us. That like much like Christian and Delano, he could be one of these guys that we just sign all of a sudden in the last minute, and he's back in training camp with us. But there is one open spot. And listen, teams are always going to take that spot and use it to get as many looks at. So it's just that we cut Armani loose early because we knew he wasn't going to be a part of our plans for sure. That there was no way now that we got Jeff Doughton that he's going to make the team. So we're doing him a favor by cutting him early so that he has enough time in the 2 months before training camp and the season to try and latch on with another team and get onto another team. So it's a favor to Brooks that we did this. And you know, we could have held on to him and cut him at the last minute and he would have had to scramble and it would have been so much harder for him. And that would have sucked. So, yeah. Starks is saying Utah is not going to beat our top 17 either. Sad truth. Well, maybe they want to give him a good shot either way, but that's what I'm hearing, that could still be a possibility. And then somebody was saying here earlier that Lamarcus Aldridge could be somebody we're looking at also. That's very intriguing to me, Lamarcus Aldridge, because he would definitely give us more of a vet edge in some ways. And he's OP in little bursts. Like he's not good overall. He can't stay out there for too long. But he still has some offensive stuff near the basket that is a little OP. Like you can't stop it. It's really hard to deal with still. But he's still real slow and he's usually not healthy. That's part of the problem. But yeah, I'm hearing that. All right, guys. Thanks for being here. Check out that Nick Nurse interview. It's really interesting. And that Gary Trent training footage on the beach, really fun, cool to see Gary doing that and stuff like that. All right, guys, tomorrow, it's a Monday memory. We're going to be looking at July the 29th, 2021, the day we drafted Scotty Wayne Barnes, number 4 pick in the 2021 draft. We will be celebrating his birthday also because it is Scotty's 21st birthday tomorrow. So tomorrow's going to be all about Scotty Barnes, celebrating the day he got drafted to the Raptors and also his 21st birthday. So I hope y'all will join me 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time tomorrow morning for celebrating the life of Scott Wayne Barnes Jr. That's right, baby. Big 4, we love you. All right, let's go Raptors. Please like, comment, subscribe. I appreciate all you guys being here. Joseph Stark saying, see you on the Scotty stream. All right, yeah. We'll see if he gets on Twitch today, and then maybe we'll have something to talk about. Tom Duke saying, stay hydrated and freak out like Joseph. All right, guys. Let's go Raptors. Yeah, baby.